Autumn, 1908, Beijing. A servant rolls a piece of cool jade across the face of the most powerful woman in China. At 72, she is still determined to look young. Maintaining her appearance has become an obsession. Beyond these walls, the empire is collapsing. Foreign powers have humiliated China. The treasury is nearly empty. None of that reaches this room. 50 meters away, across a small lake, a man sits confined on an island. He is only 37. On paper, he is the Emperor of China. In practice, he is a prisoner. For generations, the official explanation was simple. 2 sick members of the royal family died within a day of each other. A tragic coincidence. Nothing more. By 1908, foreign fleets sit openly in Chinese harbors. Treaties signed under pressure rather than negotiation. The empire that once awed the world now negotiates from a position of weakness. Then, nearly a century later, scientists examined a single strand of hair taken from the emperor's remains. What they found changed the story completely. To understand what happened, you have to go back to when she was nobody. A teenage concubine among dozens of others, practically invisible in a palace of thousands. In a palace of thousands, a low-ranking concubine had almost no path upward. Beauty wasn't enough. Family connections mattered more. She had neither in any meaningful quantity. Then she does the one thing none of the others managed. She gives the emperor a son, his only son to survive to adulthood. Everything changes after that. When the emperor dies, she doesn't quietly disappear the way tradition expects. She moves fast. She builds alliances. Within weeks, she pushes aside the men meant to rule for her son. She installs herself at the center of power, quite literally. Officials address the child emperor on his throne. Behind a yellow silk curtain sits his mother. They hear her voice, never her face. For nearly 50 years, she refuses to let go, not when her son becomes an adult, not even after he dies. She places her 3-year-old nephew on the throne instead. Imagine what half a century of absolute power does to a person's mind. Former attendants describe an elaborate daily regimen meant to slow the effects of age itself. Some of it is well documented. Ground pearl powder daily, ginseng for vitality, cold jade pressed against her skin morning and night. These practices, at least, are not in dispute. Then the stories grow stranger. Several accounts claim she drank human breast milk, believing it held life-giving properties. We should be careful here. Rumors travel and grow with distance. Some of these stories may be true, some exaggerated, some possibly invented by political enemies who wanted future generations to see her as unnatural. The bigger picture stays clear either way. This is a woman fighting a daily battle against time itself, obsessed with control over her legacy, her image, and over everyone whose future depended on her staying alive. By this point, every official in the palace understands where real authority sits. The throne is a formality. The woman behind the curtain is the actual government. Which raises the real question. If she was willing to go this far to control her own future, what was she willing to do to control the man who would inherit power the moment she was gone? His name is Guangxu. He is not next in line by ordinary custom. When her own son died without an heir, she bypassed the normal succession and chose her 3-year-old nephew instead. The logic is simple. A 3-year-old cannot rule an empire. Someone else has to rule for him, someone like her. But children, inconveniently, grow up. By the 1890s, China faces crisis, humiliating military defeats, falling further behind an industrializing world every year. Guangxu looks at all of it and decides something has to change. He reads reports of foreign gunboats humiliating Chinese ports, of territory conceded without a fight. For a young emperor raised on stories of Qing greatness, the contrast is unbearable. In the summer of 1898, he launches one of the most ambitious reform programs in Qing history. New schools, a modern military, sweeping changes to government and the economy. It becomes known as the 100 Days Reform, and it lasts almost exactly that long. Because the woman who mastered palace politics for decades has not gone anywhere. She moves quickly. The reform movement is crushed. Leading reformers are arrested, some executed, others forced to flee. His decrees are revoked almost as fast as they were issued. Then she turns to the emperor himself. He is taken to a place called Yingtai, a pavilion on a tiny island, beautiful at first glance. Also, unmistakably, a prison. Water surrounds him on every side. His movements are watched. His access to ministers is tightly controlled. For all practical purposes, the Emperor of China has become a prisoner. He fills the empty years with study, reportedly reading foreign texts on government and science smuggled to him by sympathetic servants, preparing for a freedom that keeps not arriving. He remains there for the next 10 years. He still wears the title of Emperor. He signs documents when instructed. Beyond that, he has almost no control over his own life. Everyone in the palace understands the arithmetic. She is getting older. He is still relatively young. Sooner or later, she will die, and everything could change. The prisoner would become emperor in more than name. He would have every reason to settle scores with the officials who betrayed him and with the woman who took his throne. Everyone around them can see the problem coming. The real question is whether she saw it too, because if there's one thing certain about her, it's that she hated losing control. By now, the clock is ticking, and in the span of a single week, everything about this arrangement is about to change, permanently, for both of them. On the morning of November 14th, the emperor suddenly becomes gravely ill. Severe pain, his stomach burning, his body weakening by the hour. Physicians are urgently called in. Officially, this isn't meant to be surprising. He had struggled with poor health for years, a chronically sick man reaching the end of a long illness. That was the explanation given at the time. By evening, he is dead. 37 years old, a prisoner for the last decade of his life, and suddenly, without further explanation, gone. On its own, that's a tragic story. But then comes the part historians still pause over. The very next day, less than 24 hours later, she dies as well. Word of the emperor's death spreads through the palace within hours, carried by messengers and telegraph lines toward provincial governors who have waited a decade for this exact news. For a decade, nothing had changed. The old empress ruled. The emperor remained confined. The situation was frozen. Then, within a single day, both central figures vanish from the board. The prisoner dies first, the jailer dies second, and the succession doesn't pass to an adult reformer. It passes to a 2-year-old boy named Puyi, chosen by her shortly before her death. Even at the very end, power stays in the hands of a child, arranged by the same woman who had ruled behind a curtain for half a century. Officially, nothing suspicious happened. 2 elderly, unhealthy royals died of natural causes, an unfortunate coincidence. And for a very long time, that's exactly where the story ended. For nearly a century, nobody could prove otherwise. Then, in 2003, a team of Chinese researchers decided to ask a very unusual witness, the emperor himself, or what remained of him. Organizations involved included national historical committees and a nuclear research institute, alongside independent forensic experts, giving the investigation a credibility rarely applied to century-old palace rumors. This wasn't a fringe investigation. Historians, forensic experts, nuclear scientists, and government researchers worked together, backed by national institutions, to find out how the emperor really died. Remarkably, his hair had survived. Hair absorbs trace chemicals as it grows, creating a kind of biological timeline. A long enough strand lets investigators look back through someone's final months. The team analyzed roughly 10 inches of the emperor's hair. The arsenic levels weren't just elevated, they were extraordinarily high, far beyond anything explainable by environment or traditional medicine. To rule out a normal pattern for the era, researchers compared his samples against other people from the same court. The difference was dramatic. His levels stood entirely alone. Then came the most important discovery. The arsenic wasn't spread evenly through the timeline. It surged sharply right at the end, a large dose delivered shortly before death. Researchers cross-checked the concentration against known historical poisoning cases from the same period, and the emperor's levels sat well above every documented lethal reference point they could find. Investigators then examined his clothing. The arsenic wasn't distributed evenly across the fabric. The highest concentrations sat around the stomach, exactly where a swallowed poison would leave its mark. A handful of palace expense records from that final week show minor, unexplained payments to attendants close to the emperor. The kind of detail historians still argue over today. Researchers estimated the total arsenic recovered at roughly 200 milligrams. As little as 60 milligrams can kill an adult. What was found in him was several times that lethal amount. By the end of the investigation, the researchers were confident. The emperor had not died from a lingering illness. The findings pointed to something deliberate. He had been poisoned. When the results became public in 2008, they made international news. A century-old palace rumor had just been confirmed by nuclear science, in a way almost no one expected to happen. And once poisoning enters the story, the question changes entirely. It's no longer whether something happened. It becomes who did it, and who understood that her death was only days away. The most obvious suspect is the woman at the center of this story. By 1908, she was seriously ill, and almost certainly aware her time was running out. She understood something better than anyone else. The moment she died, he would no longer be a prisoner. After a decade of confinement, he would finally rule in more than name. And if that happened, he could reverse her policies, remove her allies, and reshape how history remembered her. No one had more to fear from his freedom, or more control over his daily life. For a decade, everything around him, including what he ate, passed through a small circle of people answering to her. If poison reached him, it had to pass through that same circle. Many historians involved in the investigation reached a similar conclusion, not from a written confession, but because motive and opportunity pointed in the same direction, toward her. But she wasn't the only person with reason to fear a free emperor. Officials who helped crush his reforms, powerful figures who sided against him in 1898, had just as much to lose. The staff who had overseen his imprisonment for 10 years also had reason to fear a restored emperor. A free Guangxu might have viewed many of them as enemies to punish. Science can tell us how he died. It can tell us roughly when he was poisoned. It cannot tell us, and never will, exactly whose hand delivered it. The hair tells us there was arsenic. The clothing tells us it was likely swallowed shortly before death. Neither one reveals the person who made sure it reached him. So, we're left with the same question historians have asked for over a century. Who had the motive and who had the opportunity in that final circle of people around him? Every origin story like this one gets buried on purpose by somebody. And uncovering exactly who did the burying, in this case, may simply be the one thing science was never built to answer.